Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 18th episode of the Digital Skills Talk series of the Digital Skills and Jobs platform. Today's episode is dedicated to digital skills in a quantum world and all you need to know about it. Now, a little bit about the Digital Skills Talks. This is a series of online events that take place every month, launched first in January 2024. Now, previous talks have touched upon a variety of technology topics, such as AI, virtual worlds, cybersecurity, blockchain, data and health, all with a focus on digital skills. Each month, the team behind the platform invites technology experts for a 30-minute morning conversation, live-streamed on Microsoft Teams and the Digital Skills EU Facebook channel. My name is Galina Misheva, and I'll be moderating the talk. Today, we have the pleasure to host two of the brightest stars in the quantum sphere in Europe, Professor Tommaso Calarco, leading quantum physicist and professor at the University of Cologne and the University of Bologna, and Professor Jacob Sherson, Director of the European Quantum Readiness Center at Aarhus University in Denmark. Gentlemen, a warm welcome. We are delighted to have you here. So let's dive right into it. Now, my first question to Professor Calarco. We're delighted to have you here. You're one of the founders, if not the main founder, behind the EU Quantum Flagship Program, launched in 2018 as probably the largest and most ambitious initiative in the field of Europe. With a budget of over 1 billion euros and a duration of 10 years, the flagship brings together research institutions, academia, industry, policymakers, enterprises, and it's safe to say that it's a unique and collaborative initiative on a scale that we've rarely seen before. So from this perspective, what are some key skills gaps that you see between academic research and industrial applications when we talk about quantum technologies?
So, well, thank you so much. First of all, thanks so much for having us here. It's very important to have this discussion for us today, including because skills is going to be the main bottleneck for us. Quantum is a little bit mysterious. Maybe some people think it is too difficult to understand. It is very specialized. This is actually not the case, as we know, we who are working there. But the main gap is really a gap in terms of numbers, in terms of we need more talent, because this field is so much expanding, both in academia and in industry, as you have mentioned, that we really need more people able to, understand the basics. But on the other hand, it's also about bridging the gap between fundamental science and really engineering. We as physicists are socialized since ages in a very wrong way, the wrongest possible way, which is that we physicists, yes, we are great, and when it becomes uninteresting, then we say, oh, it's an engineering challenge, okay? And we teach our students that engineers, if they are human beings, it's possible, but certainly not of the same class as physicists. And now I start my lecture, in the first lecture with my physics students, preaching them that this is the most wrong thing that they can imagine, because our whole field is actually coming from, interdisciplinarity and intertwining between fundamental ideas and the ability to scale them, the ability to make them practical. So this aspect means that there is a lot of skills that we physicists do not have, how to make things small, compact, robust, and cheap. This is not something which is in our vocation, so to say, but it is the thing which is essential to make them actually practical as technologies. At the same time, engineers often, unless they are in some special courses, they do not get a sort of a basic training on what quantum is. And so really, this is the main gap that we have to bridge by bringing together this. And actually, there are a lot of initiatives, and Jacob is one of the leaders in creating this at European level, which are bringing this together. So that's the main point. We have skills which are needed. We have skills in Europe. We have to bring them together and bring them within the same people who both have to cover the whole arch between the fundamental side and the application engineering technology side.
This is quite a challenge, and it exists in many areas. For me, for myself, quantum is a myth and a mystery. But we'll come back to this interdisciplinary training and how can we actually get people from different disciplines to combine different approaches and models. But Professor Sherson, before I come back to Professor Calarco, it's also a pleasure to have you on board. Now, Professor Calarco already introduced you, but you are the coordinator of the European Quantum Readiness Center and an initiative under the EU Quantum Flagship. So can you tell us a little bit about it and about quantum readiness? So what is quantum readiness? How do you define it for industry? And what are some of the main barriers that companies and especially SMEs that are the backbone of Europe face in terms of this?
So first of all, again, thank you very much for having both me and Tommaso here. It's a very important discussion that we are having both on the training sort of within the educational system, but also very much training outside in the industry. And that's really a challenge that we have so many engineers that are in training right now, but we also have a lot of engineers and others that are already out there in the workplace, and finding ways of integrating those is really one of the ways of making the many startups that we have in Europe grow and find the talent that they need. They can bring in experience from various other industrial settings and bring that into the sort of the emerging quantum industry. Quantum readiness can be defined in many ways. I usually define it to say that quantum readiness are the decisions that you make today that you don't regret in 10 years from now. So those are the ones that really build in capital of that build capacities and future possibilities. And one of the tasks of the European Quantum Readiness Center is really sort of from pipeline to pipeline and to beginning cradle to grave to foster this sort of quantum readiness awareness and knowing what are the kinds of initiatives that small SMEs, larger corporations, public institutions, and governments can do today that is going to prepare an ecosystem that is going to be competitive on the European scale, so that we can, at Europe, compete with the rest. What we are trying to say is that all of the decisions that small companies are making today, other companies are making, are a part of building that ecosystem. That means that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when everything explodes and we have a huge growth and a huge competitiveness, then we will really be measured by which companies do we have, but also which institutions and interconnections have we created. And right now, we are at sort of a very vulnerable time for the ecosystem, and that is because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of discussions, there's a lot of opportunities, but there's also a lot of uncertainty, which means we are navigating in this space of increasing uncertainty. There's both technological uncertainty about the time scales and also monetization questions about which ways can we take this technology in. There are a lot of good examples now, but there's also a lot of uncertainty, which means that right now companies, organizations are faced with sort of a little bit two different choices to make, either to listen to, let's say, the very best hype or the most hype and say everyone should be engaged and have an all-in effort towards quantum technologies today. The risk of that would be that we could get an overheating of over-promises and then no return on investment or not sufficient return on investment on a short time scale, which would then lead us to potential sort of backlashes. But the other hand is even worse, where we say, well, there's all this uncertainty and it may be coming and we don't know, so no one does anything, and then we actually don't develop that ecosystem. So the balance that we need to make is really to make sure that we all think about quantum awareness and we all think about what is the level of buy-in that we need to have at the moment now. And in order to really understand what that should be, then what we at the European Quantum Readiness try to do is we take research and community efforts and input in order to gather sort of insights of what does it mean to reap benefits in the quantum technology era, which roughly speaking, you can sort of think about two different approaches. You can think about a first mover approach and saying there can be market advantages to take this technology, be a first in this area in your domain and reap all of the benefits of that. That could be as a company, could also be as a nation, or it could be as Europe as a whole. On the other hand, there's also a second approach, which is to be sort of a second mover and watch for the maturation of the technology and the business models, and then to very easily and quickly adapt that into your business models and into your processes, and save some of the other costs. In some businesses, this is going to, and domains, the first mover advantages are going to be larger. In others, the second mover advantages are going to be larger. And what we try to do at the EQRC is to really provide, you can say, guidelines that are not coming from consultancies that have a vested interest in sort of just selling their own products, but really saying what are the questions that a company should be asking itself to say, what is our appropriate level of buy-in? And that means asking yourself a question about saying, in our particular industry, what is the time from conception to market? And is that a software company where it's 2 months, or is that a pharmaceutical where it's 5 years? Then the investment scheme should be different. What I think is one of the biggest challenges that is coming from that is that there's this uncertainty in what are the return on investment on investing in quantum in the short term. And I think that what we can do at the European level is to be better at telling all of the positive stories that exist out there already, to show that there are already really, really good use cases out there. And by saying not just how they monetize today, but also how they contribute to an ecosystem that we are all going to be benefiting from, then we can give lighthouses and examples for others to follow. But I think we can also create just a little bit more branding opportunities for the early adopters, so that they monetize somewhat, but they also get this branding and the advantage coming from getting the image of being a first mover. Those are the kinds of ways in which we can maybe slightly interfere with the growth of the ecosystem in a way that we are all going to be benefiting from in a sort of 5-10 year time horizon. So that's a sort of a brief. Of course, much more can be talked about in terms of quantum readiness, but that was a little bit of an overview of some of the efforts that we do.
This is fascinating, honestly fascinating. So the way I understand it, it's sort of preparing today to deliver the future as well. So it's not just about being ready today and fostering skills development today, but it's also a forward look towards the future and where can we be, also taking into account the status of different companies and how they can best implement these models to progress further and to grow, and to really help Europe remain competitive on a global scale, especially compared to its counterparts.
Yes, exactly. And maybe being able to understand that there are some use cases today that you can already benefit from, but there are also, let's say, hype and misconceptions out there that could lead you to believe that you could actually benefit from the same thing. So being able, and that's where skills and awareness is so important, that Tommaso talked about the engineers. Another one is the decision makers, right? So educating the decision makers today is the second skills bottleneck that we can identify that we have in the quantum technology ecosystem.
Fantastic. Tommaso?
Yes, no, this topic of hype is essential, because expectation management is really crucial, especially for a field which needs demystification, needs understanding, and there is a lot of myth and mystery around it. And so it is quite easy. So there are, fortunately, it's a small minority, but there are some companies or startups which are sort of riding the hype. That's understandable, of course, because this, when you have to pitch to a VC, maybe you do not 200% check whether everything that you are saying is completely already realizable and sure. But this can damage the field and can damage even the first movers. So as a matter of fact, my institute, which I'm leading here at the Jülich Research Center in Germany, is the Institute of Quantum Control. But what I'm doing for a large part of my time is quantum hype control. So this is a very important keyword, yeah, because, finding this balance, which Jakob very properly identified, is not too little, not too much. Because we can burn, expectations, we can burn perspectives if we now are exaggerating, and if we don't keep sort of the long thrust that we need to get there, because some of the applications in quantum technologies are already here, already commercial, but some, especially quantum computing, they have a much longer development timescale. And the appreciation of that is very important. It's an essential skill for everybody to engage in this.
So a quick illustration of combining the two things that we talked about so far with the new emerging opportunities and then the need for the engineering skills is one of the projects at the EQRC that we do. We enlist virtual scholars around ecosystem research challenges. And one of the recent results that we did was investigating in quantum computing and on the other pillars, what are some of the most sort of discussed and prominent use cases, and then discuss or map out what is the technology readiness level of these. And we see across all four pillars that there is a distribution of technology readiness levels, but there are technology readiness level 9, so that is sort of commercially readiness along all of the pillars. One interesting fact is that if you look at it, instead of the technology readiness level, look at the market readiness level, which is distinguish it between saying we physicists can take our huge laboratory and we can move it into a hospital and then we can do a real world interaction. But that's not the same as saying that we can do that in 1,000 different hospitals. In order to do that, we actually need to miniaturize and scale. And that is exactly the engineering challenge that Tommaso was talking about. And in our study, that comes out to say there are virtually no MRL9, so really market-ready and mass-produced quantum technologies out there. Atomic clocks will be one example, but very so that is the barrier that we have at the moment is we have those proof of principles. We also have gains, and you can reap the benefits in some circumstances, but there is the engineering challenge of making that scale.
Okay. Amazing. I'm going to go back to skills because you mentioned engineers and hospitals, and we can tell that quantum is a technology that everybody has the potential to benefit from if they have the ropes. So how critical, my question is to Tommaso, but feel free to both jump in. How critical is interdisciplinary training in quantum? I'm thinking physics, computing, ethics, engineering, so all these concepts and aspects that you mentioned. And also, how ready are European education systems in comparison to China and the US, for example, to deliver this?
Well, it's not critical, it's indispensable. There is no quantum without interdisciplinarity. Quantum technologies is by definition in itself an interdisciplinary field. It starts from interaction between physics, computer science, engineering, but also mathematics and chemistry since the very early days. So this needs to take place. And now the other dimensions, not only in terms of decision making, but also dimensions such as ethics or governance questions are coming very much to the foreground. Actually, this is something which some colleagues from our field, they tend to say, oh, why do these people who know nothing about quantum tell us what we should be doing? And my answer is, precisely because they do not know anything about quantum. That's why they should be telling us something, because only in this way we are going to avoid a situation we see in AI in which development was such that everybody says, oops, almost too late, and now we have to regulate a posteriori. So it's not about regulating, it's about conceiving development a priori, which also requires that kind of disciplines. Now, what can I say? Certainly in Europe, well, Europe was the cradle of quantum mechanics. I mean, we have the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology this year, 100 years of quantum mechanics, and this was invented. It was a collective effort, invented, developed in Europe. And still, in terms of expertise, we are leading in all of these disciplines. I should say that also in terms of the interdisciplinary offering and sort of curricula, we are seeing a very strong development here in which we are sort of cutting edge at the world level. Of course, there is a lot of competence and great ability to train people. We are seeing, for instance, in China that up until a few years ago, you would go to China and you would meet leaders who would speak perfect English and be really at the forefront of the field. And all of them, or most of them, would have been trained outside of China. Now you go to China, this is something we see in the last couple of years, and you meet people who speak perfect English, they have state-of-the-art training, and they never left the country. So it means that also their ability the Chinese ability to really train their own workforce has been ramped up. So it's not like we are falling behind, and also not with respect to the US. So there is a very strong exchange. But it's the possibility to really now create structures, curricula. This is one of the points which also our Commission Vice President Virkkunen, when about 1 month ago she announced the main points of her quantum strategy, which is going to be disclosed on July 2nd, adopted by the European Commission. One of the 4 points that she announced is indeed talent and skills. And this is very much going to rely on the possibility to create, to bring together academic institutions as well as industry to create curricula which can address this interdisciplinarity. All, not just without any exception, all of the efforts to establish new master studies, new PhD programs, and so on, they all rely on bringing together the different disciplines. And this is really a foundational principle also of the activity which Jakob is leading.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that one of the really important aspects of ensuring that there is talent is ensuring both that there's training of talent and then a placement of talent, that this pipeline of saying that they know where they can get jobs. So one of the efforts that we're doing at the European level is really to create a transparency of skills that are needed at the end stages. And so mapping out, we scrape jobs on a daily basis in quantum and ask ourselves and try to have a really up-to-date picture about what are the current job requirements, the jobs that are available, but also the particular skills that are needed there, and then go back to the educational institutions and map out what kind of skills in the same language. We have a competence framework for quantum technologies that both companies and educational institutions can adopt in order to have this shared language of skills that ensures transparency across this pipeline. So what we're really hoping for is for more companies to be very verbal about what kinds of both core physics and engineering skills they need, but also the broader ones that are related to the monetization and marketization of this, and that students both in physics, in chemistry and engineering can see themselves and the skills that they're acquiring, but also increasingly in business schools, that they will be able to see that there is a beneficial job market there for them, and that we then get a push from below to see that there should also be training efforts established, broader speaking, where not just ethical considerations and governance, but also more sort of broadly social science inclusion is introduced at the skills level in order to sort of complement that skills bundle that is necessary for the ecosystem growth.
So it really is a combination of a multitude of aspects. And we received a question in the chat before I move on to the other project that you coordinate, Jakob, but we received a question in the chat of whether you could give us a couple of quantum examples that have the highest readiness level.
Yeah,
yeah.
Of course, Tommaso can supplement, but I can say from one of the collaborations that we have is to say that even within quantum computing, which is sort of a maturing, there are examples of what we can call quantum-inspired computing that is very innovative, that is very novel, that is algorithmically very new, and that is being implemented in companies across various different sectors today to bring computational advantages. So this is where advanced mathematics meets the computational mindset or the quantum mindset, and then brings innovations that are sort of market ready already today.
Well, actually, since I didn't plan on this, but just by chance, because normally I put my backpack far away from the desk, but today I was in a hurry, so I didn't. So I have to reach into my backpack. We really didn't plan this because people may want something concrete, right? So here I have something
improvising.
which,
Go ahead.
Which our audience might never have seen, and maybe they don't even know that it exists. And since the ultimate truth source, of course, in our times is what you can read on a cell phone screen, I will switch it on now so that you can see that this is a Samsung Galaxy Quantum. Yes, so this is the first consumer electronic device of the second quantum revolution. It is not doing secure quantum communication. It is doing secure classical communications, but based on a quantum random number generator, which is this little guy here, okay, this 2.5 millimeter square thing, which is now a product when I was young, when I was your age, this took the whole size of a dinner table filled with mirrors and lasers and lenses and so on and so forth. And now it's 2.5 millimeters squared. And this is a very exciting and a very sad story, which is really connected to what we are discussing today, because this was invented in Europe, in Switzerland, very much like the World Wide Web, which, as I would like everyone to remember, was invented by physicists, yes, in Geneva. And now, very much like the World Wide Web, in which all the cache was made elsewhere, up to a very, very high fidelity, okay? In the same way, this thing was invented in Europe, it is being commercialized in South Korea, and now the company making it, IDQ, who had a majority of shares was owned by South Korea Telecom, has been purchased by IonQ in the US. And so it means that, we really have to grow the whole ecosystem and also to grow those decision-making skills also in our investors, in our decision makers, in order to make sure that, not again, all the cache of what we develop and conceive is made elsewhere.
I myself have never seen that before. It's almost as if looking at photos of old computers and how they used to take up 2 stories of a building, and now I have a laptop right in front of me and I can talk to you in a different corner in Europe.
Exactly.
Jacob, tell me a little bit about the DigiQ project, because I know that one of its objectives is to provide entry points for a wide audience of learners. So it's about expanding the sphere and getting everyone involved. So can you share some examples of successful training programs or formats, whether this is boot camps, whether it's micro-credentials, corporate partnerships, that currently support non-experts to become quantum literate?
Yes. And just to stress it, that in the quantum, we have always preferred a community-based effort. And the same was when we were establishing these quantum education efforts, which was to say, rather than establishing one elite program for quantum technology, we really want to involve all of Europe. And that's why we have a very broad set of partners in DigiQ, and we're establishing not 1, but 16 different master's programs, and then interconnecting those and then broadening them out. Many of them start in physics, but they're now trying to explore how to become increasingly interdisciplinary. And one of the let's say there's a series of different initiatives that we try to create at a pan-European level, and it's around sort of sharing of scarce resources. One is teaching resources where we can actually interconnect lecturers and we can empower maybe universities that are not just yet ready to establish a full-on quantum effort, to say that they can tap into this ecosystem, and then they can send their students virtually or physically to other locations in Europe and to get the expertise from there. We also physically locate the students around Europe. We take a few hundred students every year and then assemble them in networks where they meet monthly, virtually. They meet up physically for training camps a couple of times a year, and they really get to know both various different levels of interest, but also various different nationalities that mix in that way. We send them out. We have a very large effort in internships and sending them out both to advanced research labs, but also into companies like Deloitte, where they can go in and they can real-world experiment with these quantum technologies. That can be both building them, but it can also be coming out into a lab and then or a company and exploring what are the interdisciplinary possibilities for this particular company or this particular institution. DigiQ is on the level of formal education at master's level, and then we have a QT Indu project, which is quantum technology for industry, which then takes care of providing free resources and training resources for practitioners in various different levels. It can be quantum machine learning, an introduction to that. It can be quantum myth busting, and it can be quantum readiness, which is one of the courses that we have developed. But it can also be advanced hands-on skills at some of the meteorological institutes, like at PTB, where you can come in and then you can actually train on some of these really advanced setups that are very scarce in Europe. And that's what we're trying to expand on now, is to one of the third skills bottlenecks that we really have is really access to high-level experimental skills. And that's costly experimental setups that are located at very few locations. So if we can get both students, interested, let's say general public, and company representatives to gain access to these training facilities, then that's a really huge boon for the training ecosystem that we can have.
Beautiful, beautiful. I don't want to end this conversation. I know that we are running out of time, so I would like to ask you both to just give me one small sentence on what is the one advice that you would give to junior professionals or to those interested in the quantum sphere. Where should they start? If you can give one sentence, what would it be?
So on my side, I can just continue and just say, go to qtindu.eu and explore some of the free courses. Go to many of the other very exciting online resources that are developing to gain some interest and then get engaged, because there are many pathways of getting engaged, no matter who you are.
In addition, just buy, there are very many good books. For instance, Quantum Computing for Dummies is actually a very good book. Take it, read it, easy.
Amazing. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been beyond interesting. I think our audience also got to see a quantum device for the first time, shaped as a Samsung Galaxy phone. So this has been a game changer for me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to speak to our audience. I'm sure everybody learned a lot. And with this, we're ready to wrap today's episode of the Digital Skills Talks. We'll share the recording soon on YouTube, so please keep your eyes peeled for it. We'll also add all the links that the gentleman just mentioned, so that you can go on and explore quantum, whether it's a myth or particular skills, if you're a little bit more advanced. And we invite you in general to explore a whole world of opportunities on the Digital Skills and Jobs platform and via the links that my colleagues posted in the chat. If you want to stay up to date with the latest developments in the EU technology and digital skills sphere, give the Digital Skills EU channel on Facebook a follow and stay tuned for the next episode of the Digital Skills Talks in July. We hope that this episode started your Wednesday off right and inspires you to dive further into the ever-changing world of quantum technology and be ready for it. Thank you for registering. Thank you for joining live. And thanks to our speakers. Special thanks to our speakers. Until next time.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.